Greetings, guys. Well, a little bit special video for you here today. As you guys are well familiar, Schrodinger's box is the premier source for do-it-yourself diagnostics. So how do you know you need an ignition coil without guessing at just replacing it after spark plugs and wires didn't work? That's obviously what we do here and what we will always focus and continue to do. But in order to get an audience that gets that higher level with the diagnostics, you need to help develop people from the very beginning and get them comfortable with just even basic stuff. So we're going to do a little bit of an experiment with a new series that we're going to do from time to time called Vicki's Car Clinic for Beginners. So the format for this is we're going to have Vicki, who is a complete novice when it comes to car maintenance and car repair, and we're just going to have her do the stuff while I walk her through it, similar if you were a complete beginner, and hopefully it'll help you guys to be able to be more confident doing your own stuff if you're just not comfortable with working around cars. So let's go ahead and see how it works, and if nothing else, maybe it'll be entertaining. Hope you enjoy. All right, we are here with Vicki, and Vicki, what kind of car do we have here?
I have a 2013 GMC Terrain.
All right, perfect. And what are we doing today?
Oil change.
Oil change. Have you done one before?
Yes, but I don't remember it that well.
She's done one before, but what is going to happen here is Vicki is going to do the oil change, and I will just help walk her through it and answer questions and make sure that she does it right, just the same as I will for you guys at home if you're following along. So are we ready to go? And the other reason I don't want to see my hat is really old, so I got a brand new one, so I don't want to get my new hat dirty. So I'm not going to do anything except run the camera.
Okay.
All right. Let's get started. Camera person Vicki has no alliteration to it. It was we had something. You're videographer Vicki. So videographer Vicki will be helping out here. What we're doing is we're laying out the stuff that you will need for your oil change. So we'll need some kind of a bucket. This is a container you can get at an auto parts store that helps you to easily pour out the oil into a container or whatever. Of course, we need oil. You will look in your owner's manual for how much you need. You will also need an oil filter, and a set of gloves is very handy to have. You will also need a ratchet and socket set as well. You'll also need some way of removing the old oil filter. There's lots of ways of doing it. My favorite are these oil wrenches, which generally fit on the bottom of the oil filter, and you can just use your ratchet to go ahead and remove it. This is my favorite way. The oil filter we have actually doesn't have this design though. It's going to just use a regular socket on the bottom of it. Also, you can use a pair of oil wrench pliers. There's all kinds of strap wrenches. Honestly, this one here is the easiest to use in my opinion, especially for a beginner. Paper towels would be great. These are shop towels, a little more durable than paper towels, but you can just use regular paper towels. A funnel for adding your oil, some safety glasses, and your owner's manual. These days, if you don't have an owner's manual because you bought a used car, you can get an owner's manual easily online by just Googling it nowadays. All right, Vicki's going to get her gloves on, and the gloves are mostly to keep your hands clean, but also if you're doing this on a hot engine, it will help to protect you from burns and things. But we are going to actually drain the engine cold, which I know is going to bring up some questions, and we will talk about that a little bit later, but you are fine draining the engine cold. It's actually safer. You don't have the hot oil. So the first thing we got to do is we have to get the car lifted up off the ground somehow so that we can get under it to drain the oil. In this case, we're using jack stands, but that's because we're doing other things to the vehicle. If you are a beginner with this, I strongly recommend that you use vehicle ramps instead of doing the jack stands, because beginners a lot of times aren't sure where the safe points are to jack up a vehicle. We'll cover that in other videos, but for an oil change, you just need to put your vehicle up on a set of ramps. Okay, Vicki, we need to pop the hood on the car. All right. All right, so we're going to take a flashlight and we're going to look, and we can see right there is a lever. See it, babe?
Yeah, I see it.
Right there. So go ahead and reach in there and push that lever. All right, and there we go. So the first thing we want to do is find two things. We want to find where we add the oil, and we want to find the oil dipstick. On this car, the oil dipstick is right in the front of the engine. Oil dipstick usually is yellow in color. Transmission dipsticks usually will have a different color like black, red, orange, and not all oil dipsticks are yellow. It'll usually say oil on the dipstick itself. Again, check your owner's manual to be sure if you have two dipsticks and you're not totally sure which one, but we do want to have the oil dipstick identified before we start, as well as the cap. You'll notice the cap here has a universal symbol on it for oil, this kind of genie lamp. It also on this cap tells you what type of oil to add to the vehicle. Your owner's manual will also tell you that information, and it's really the best source. Also, the auto parts store can look up and they can tell you what type of oil your car will need. But we need to identify the dipstick and the oil fill. All right, so before we begin, Vicki, we need to be comfortable with checking the oil, because otherwise we don't know that we added the right amount of oil when we're done, right? So let's go ahead and pull the dipstick out. We're making sure that the car is not running and that it's been sitting for at least 5 minutes so the oil goes to the pan, and let's take a look. And we can see that the oil definitely is almost filling the second hole. It's completely filling the first hole. We know this is where our level is. If you see a streak of oil anywhere else, you can ignore that. It's this oil filling these holes that we want to pay attention to. You can see there's a couple of crosshairs showing your minimum level and your maximum level. So the maximum level is generally when the engine is hot, and it'll even tell you that on the dipstick. Right now the engine's cold, so we can see that we are just a little bit low. All right, we're going to put that dipstick back, and now we know how to check our oil so we can be sure we add the correct amount later. All right, next step, we've got the car up on the ramps. We need to get under the car, and we have to find the oil drain plug. And for a complete beginner, this is going to be a little challenging, because the car is going to, a lot of times, have two pans, and you've got to make sure you've got the oil pan. So the oil pan is going to be under the engine. The other pan is going to be for the transmission. So, Vicki, you are probably not familiar with this, so how are you going to know which of these is the transmission and which is the engine?
You're going to show me, right?
Well, I will show you, but do you have any ideas, any guesses?
I don't. It's ugly under here.
It is a little bit intimidating. It is.
It's ugly under here.
So let me help you to identify so that we make sure we do the right thing. So we have two major components here, as you can see. And in this car, there's an exhaust pipe that kind of separates them on this particular model. This over here is the transmission.
Okay. We don't want to mess with that.
We don't want to mess with that. Not for this video, but for a future one when we do a transmission fluid change. This is going to be the engine oil pan. And if we look on the back of it here, there is a bolt at the very back of it for draining the oil. Now, how do I know that that is the oil pan? The reason is because if we look over here by the wheel, well, first of all, I know it through experience. I can just look at this. It's flat. It's the shape of an oil pan, but also some transmission pans are, but I'm just doing it out of experience. If you don't have the experience, if we look all the way over here, go ahead and slide over. See how we have all these belts and pulleys and everything? Transmissions don't have that. Engines do. So I know that that's with the engine, and this pan is right next to that.
Okay.
So that is our engine oil pan. This pan is way across the opposite side from it. That has to be the transmission. All right, Vicki, so your next step now is we want to start draining the oil, because while the oil's draining, we can start doing other things because it takes a while for the oil to drain.
I see.
All right, you got your safety glasses on?
I do.
All right, so the first thing we need to do, we need to find the right socket for that bolt.
I see.
So you got a socket set? So the socket should fit exactly with very, very, very little play. If you don't have the right socket, you're going to round off the corners on this bolt, and then you have a really long day ahead of you. Looks like one more. On most GM vehicles, it's a 15. So one of them is going to say 15.
Oh, okay. I can't see it
Yep.
here, so we're going to go with this.
That looks like a 15.
Yeah.
There it is. Okay, great. So now you need your ratchet.
Yes, I do. I need it.
Now we got to determine, are we tightening or are we loosening?
Oh, there's no room under here.
No room?
No room.
All right. So what we need is we need a ratchet that's got a little bit better profile. So let me go get you something.
All right.
All right. How's that one?
That's pretty good.
Yep. Right now, if we swing the ratchet and we pull it, it's turning it to the right, isn't it?
Oh, it is. Oh, okay.
Yep. So hold it in this hand.
Oh.
So we want to flip that little switch there.
And how does that work?
Just flip it.
I gotcha. Okay.
All right. Now, hold this still. Hold this part still,
Right.
but only flip the ratchet. We see that it only moves when you're spinning to the left. So the catch is righty-tighty, lefty-loosey.
Gotcha.
So now you're lefty-loosey.
Okay.
Now, we got a problem here. What's going to happen when we remove that bolt?
Well, I don't want to get oil in my hair
Exactly.
there.
Well, I'm not worried about your hair. I'm worried about my floor.
Okay.
So what we want to do is get the bucket.
The bucket is in
Yep.
front
So
of
go ahead and get that bucket and place it underneath
me. Okay, where
where the oil's going to drain.
Is that pretty good? Are you eyeballing that pretty good?
Yeah, that looks pretty good. If we line up the edge of the bucket with the edge of the bolt, we know because there's going to be a little pressure when it comes out.
Okay, so
right?
we want to move that flashlight.
Yep,
too.
we can move that light.
Okay.
Make sure everything's clear.
All right.
And I want to line up the edge of my bucket with the edge of the bolt. And then we can reposition it later. But it is going to come out with a little bit of force. And this is also why we don't want the oil to be hot. Because we don't want a mess of hot oil that can get on us and burn us.
And do I want to be way over here?
Yeah, you don't want your face under here or your body under there. You just want to reach across for it. The longer the ratchet handle, the easier it's going to be to turn. So you're going to want to go to the bottom of the ratchet handle so you get more torque.
Okay.
And you want to break it loose. And it can take a little muscle to do it.
Do this?
Yeah, sure.
Because the last person who did it.
No, put some muscle into it.
Okay, so what am I doing here?
Yep, you're gonna break it loose. So you have to use some force. Sometimes they're on kind of tight. It'll only loosen one way. That's why we did the righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So keep going against the resistance, and eventually the bolt will come loose.
Really?
Yeah, it will. It will. Again, the longer the ratchet, usually the easier it is. Let me go ahead and give it a try. All right, there it goes. All right.
Okay, I'm such a wolf. All right. Am I going to keep going?
Okay, now you're going to keep going.
Okay.
Keep loosening it until you think you can get it with your fingers. So just hold your finger on it there to give a little bit of resistance
Here.
while you continue to ratchet it. Yep. Just hold the socket. Yep. And then just keep going. There you go, like that. Keep going.
Oh, cool. Okay.
All right. And then at some point, you should be able to remove it with your fingers.
Should I? Okay, let me try
You
it.
can try,
Let me try it.
since you got all that hand strength. Okay, now.
You know what? I'm being a really good sport.
Now go really slow here because you want to make sure, you want to try to catch the bolt when it comes out, because if you're using a bucket, you don't want this all the way at the bottom of the bucket, right?
I see. I got you.
Yep. So it'll start dripping some oil in a little bit. And when it
How
does,
long is
just
this bolt?
it's probably maybe an inch and a half. There you go. You got it. Right into the bucket too. Awesome.
That.
Nice job.
Yeah, because I did that.
All right.
Okay.
Oil looks kind of dirty.
It's really dirty because
Yeah.
it's been a while.
Yeah, it's actually been. I'm embarrassed to admit because you'd think that Vicky's car would get oil changes pretty regularly, but
So how long does it take?
it should drain for about 15 minutes. While this is happening, we can get out and we can do some other things because this is going to take about 15 minutes.
Wow. Okay.
All right, let's go. Okay, so while the oil changes, we can still be functional and do some things. What else are we going to need to do you think?
Well, we need to do the oil filter.
The filter. So this is a good time now for us to try to find the oil filter. And if it's not in the way of our draining oil, we can remove the oil filter at the same time. All right, before we find that oil filter, I do want to mention one thing about the condition of the oil here. And you actually mentioned this when we were talking about maybe doing a video on this. What was the question you had about the temperature of the oil?
Oh, I had heard that you have to run the vehicle before you change the oil to warm
Right.
up the oil. But you said that's not necessary.
That is not necessary, and it'll be a little controversial, I can imagine, but here's the thing, there's a scientific explanation for it. The thought process is that with the hot oil, you absorb more contaminants. And you can think of that. What happens if you have iced tea and you add sugar to it? What happens? Just goes right to the bottom, and you got to stir it like crazy to get it to dissolve. What happens when you put sugar in hot tea? dissolves right away. So the theory is the hot oil will dissolve those contaminants. The problem is that oil is not like tea. Oil is like honey. So when you have the contaminants in the oil, and there are contaminants in the oil, they don't just settle to the bottom when the oil is cold. It would take years for that to happen. It still is suspended in the oil. And even if it did settle, it's settling in the oil pan. So if you didn't change the oil for like 5 years and didn't drive the car, it's going to take years for that sediment to come out of honey as opposed to out of cold water, because it's not even remotely similar. The other thing is that the risk for a beginner of dealing with that hot oil. Did you get oil all over your gloves when you did that?
I did.
Yeah, you got oil all over your gloves. If that oil is hot, that's going to burn you. And remember, oil is heavy, so it stays on your skin. It can cause much more severe burns than water would. So really, you're not getting any benefit from hot oil, and you also have much more safety and less likelihood to get burned. So, really, if you change your oil regularly, even if there was an advantage with the oil being hot to absorb contaminants, it's so minimal, it doesn't outweigh the risk. All right, so what we're going to do now is we've got our oil filter. You will see this filter actually has a kind of a bolt shape on the bottom of it, so you just use a regular socket for that, and we'll find the right one. What we need to do is we've got to find the old oil filter, so I'm going to let you take a look and see if you can find it.
Well, I have no idea.
No idea? Well, look around. Just look around. Usually it's on the bottom of the engine. I can tell you, I know from experience, yours is not. What's O?
Well, what is this right here?
That's the oil filter.
Oh,
she did it. All right. All right. Where's the oil filter?
It's down here. It's the green and...
Yep, the green canister thing with the label. That's the oil filter on your car, so it just happens to be kind of towards the front of the car on the side of the engine there. In a lot of cars, it's on the bottom of the engine, but again, you just have to kind of look around for it, but that is obviously the oil filter because of its shape. So it's in a little bit of a tight space there. I'm not sure whether that'll be easier to reach from the top or the bottom. So let's go under the car and see which one's easier. Okay. Can you reach it from the bottom there?
Actually, yes. Yes, I can.
You can reach it. All right, great. Okay, so we can see Vicki can get her hands on that oil filter. The only trouble is she's not going to be able to turn it. And any guy is not going to be able to turn that either. Those are usually on there pretty tight. We need a special tool for it. Vicki, can you feel at the bottom of the filter, there's little, it's like a hexagon kind of shape, right? There's edges to it.
Yes,
yep.
It's a place to grip something.
Yeah, there's a grip kind of thing. That's what that special tool that I started the video with is for. So let me get you that special tool and we'll see if it fits. All right, so Vicki's going to try to fit that special tool on. It's best to buy that tool while you're at the auto parts store because there's lots of sizes. There's dozens of sizes. Does that fit on there or does it just spin freely?
No, it seems to fit.
That fits. Okay. Then you are able to remove that oil filter. So awesome. We're looking from Vicki's perspective here, and this is our oil just about done draining. Our oil pan, we moved to the front of the car, and Vicki was able to find the oil filter right there in the middle. And we can see she's got the special tool on there. Before we do that, let's go ahead and plug the oil pan bolt back in. Okay. Because we're done draining the oil. And as a beginner, it's probably best you do these one at a time so that you also don't forget to do something. We don't want to forget to put our oil bolt back in and stuff. So just do things one at a time. When you get more experienced, a lot of times I'll just do this simultaneously and drain both of them. Okay. So go ahead and get that on there.
It's hand tightened, is that
Yep, right now it's hand tight.
Okay.
Go ahead and get your ratchet. So we need to flip that switch on the ratchet so that it tightens now, righty-tighty, so that when we spin the bolt to the right, we're tightening it. And you can see now when you're spinning it to the right, the ratchet tightens the bolt. Now here's the question, how tight? So you tightened it finger tight, and then you tightened it a little more with the ratchet to now where it really feels like there's resistance, right?
Is that all there is? Or is
so you just want to turn it maybe a quarter of a turn more. But you don't want to over tighten this. The biggest mistake that beginners do is they over tighten things. And you don't need to torque this thing like 100 foot-pounds. So just tighten it so it's another quarter of a turn after the resistance is pretty strong.
Okay.
And yeah, that's pretty tight.
It's tight.
That's pretty tight. Okay, why don't you let me go ahead in there and just double check it real quick because I kind of can feel for it. The other thing is that for a beginner, you're probably not going to have a torque wrench. But if you tighten this to 20 foot-pounds, you're going to be in pretty good shape. So one thing I recommend for beginners is to buy a torque wrench, just a cheap torque wrench. And that way, when you torque bolts, you get a feel for how tight they are. And it's amazing how accurate you can be just by feel. But without feel, I'm going to go ahead and try this. And yeah, that's tight enough. That's plenty tight enough. So we just did finger tight, tightened it with the ratchet until it really, you could feel the resistance. And then we just want a quarter of a turn more, and that's it.
I think I expected more.
Yeah, the biggest mistake is exactly that. People think that you have to tighten this with all your might. And if you do that, all you're going to end up doing is either stripping the threads or breaking the bolt. Yep. That's plenty tight right there.
Okay.
All right. Let's go ahead and get that filter out. So now you can move your bucket over because we're done with the oil pan. So slide it right under where the filter is.
And I think that's right about right.
Okay, is it right under the filter?
It's right here.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So now get your wrench. And for this, we've got a really skinny wrench. Let's show them the wrench there. So this is a really, really skinny wrench so that it can fit into tight spaces. Now the first thing, is it on tighten or loosen?
It is on loosen, I believe. How do I know for sure? Just the same way?
So that looks like tighten to me. See how it's tightening to the right?
Okay.
So we need to flip that switch. It resists when we go to the left. See how it resists when we go to the left?
Okay.
That's going to loosen it. It's a little tricky for you now because you're working in a mirror image.
I was going to say.
Right? Because you're upside down.
Okay.
Yep. But trust the ratchet.
Okay.
Bucket's right underneath it.
Yeah.
See how it's spinning?
Yes.
Is it pretty loose?
I feels that way.
All right, go ahead and get your ratchet and the special tool out now
Okay.
because you're jammed up against the fan, so we can't continue to loosen it all the way, or otherwise you're going to jam your ratchet up. So get everything out.
And I'm going to turn it off, and then I do it fast, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you don't have to do it fast. It's just you don't want to get oil all over yourself. All right, so we can see the oil is draining from the filter now.
Okay. It's a long ways coming.
Yeah, it screws in a long way.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
Yep.
I thought it was going to come a little faster than that.
That's what she said.
Set myself up. Got it.
Got it. All right. See how all that oil spills out? That's why you really, when you're a beginner, if this is your first change, you don't want to do this when it's hot.
No.
Also, by the way, you
would
wouldn't be able to hold that filter in your hand.
Exactly.
It would be so hot, you would not be able to hold it. You're going to drop it then because it's so hot. You drop it on your face. It's just not worth it.
Right.
All right, now, what we want to do is we want to try not to spill all the oil out of the filter because we want to look at it and check it. So go ahead and this is also why we have the paper towels. So let me get you a paper towel. Okay, so just clean the outside of the filter off so we don't get oil everywhere. And I'm going to show you a little trick here. This is a clean lid from a pickle jar. Got a nice white background on it. What I want you to do is just pour just like a teaspoon of oil from the filter into there. Perfect. And let's take a look at it. All right, so I'm going to shine a light into it. And we can see it is pretty dark. It is very dark. But here's the thing. It doesn't have any metal particles in it. The way we would tell is it would look like glitter from like a kid's art project. Right. It would almost look like there is glitter in there, just thousands and thousands and thousands of little tiny flakes of glitter. We do not see that. So that's good. It means you don't have any engine damage. Your engine bearings are good. If you do this and it looks like somebody just poured glitter in there, that is a definite warning sign that your engine is in trouble. Okay. The other thing we look for is if it looks like a milkshake, if it's real creamy looking, real creamy colored, that's indication there's coolant in the oil, indication of a major engine problem. But the way it looks now, it's just really, really dark.
So it's just dirty oil.
It's just dirty oil, so that's good. So you're in good shape.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to show you one more little trick here. And that is, let's get our new oil filter. Can you go ahead and grab the new oil filter? We want to do a couple of things that are really important. The first thing is the new filter about the same size and shape as the old filter. Do you see this rubber ring here?
Yes.
That's called the gasket. We need to make absolutely sure that that gasket came off with this filter here. And we see it did.
I see it.
Okay, this rubber ring here. Sometimes when you take off the oil filter, that rubber ring can stick in the engine.
Oh, okay.
And what's going to happen is if that rubber ring is stuck in the engine, you're not going to seal with your new one. So you've got to check to make sure that that rubber ring came out. If it didn't, you need to reach up where the oil filter was screwed in, and you have to pull that rubber ring off of the surface. But we see that our rubber ring is there. So one final thing we have to do, and then we can get started, and that is we want to add some fresh engine oil into the new filter to prime the filter, because we don't want the filter to have to fill with oil when we start the engine and you're running your engine without oil for a few seconds. So let's get our brand new oil and we will top off the filter a little bit.
Wait a second, I have a question.
You got a question? Yes.
So the opening isn't similar. It doesn't look like they gave us the right filter. Or like
Good catch on that. So what Vicki noticed here is, look, I can fit my thumb into the hole in the old filter, and look at the new filter.
it's too small.
Nice
It's not
catch.
gonna fit.
Nice catch. Yeah, that won't thread in. So they gave us the wrong filter. So we have to go back and get the right filter, but this is why you want to check this for sure. We wouldn't have been able to thread that in. It's too small, but nice catch on that. So let's go get a new filter. Did we get the new filter?
We did.
How do those look?
Better.
We noticed that where you screw it in, the holes are now the same. These holes I'm not worried about. There's different styles for different manufacturers, but the main thing is that we can now screw it in correctly because that is the correct size. So nice catch on that earlier. And that happens from time to time. That's why you want to check. So what we want to do is we want to add oil to the new filter. We actually can throw the old one away. We don't need it anymore. So we want to dispose of it by emptying the rest of the stuff in our bucket. And we'll be able to bring that bucket to the auto parts store, and they'll actually empty it for us and recycle it. I'm going to hold this funnel up over it.
Just a little bit?
Yeah, just a little bit. A little more. And a little more. We just want to kind of fill up the filter. Let's see, we can see there. Yeah, that's about full right there.
Let me see. No, it's not really.
Okay, but that's okay, because here's the thing. We want to think about this. The way your filter is mounted is sideways, so it's all going to dump out if we fill it to the top.
Gotcha.
Yep. So what we're going to do is we're going to let this sit for a minute, and the filter is going to absorb a lot of that. And then the other thing is, I'm wondering, because there was so little clearance between the filter and the fan, we may have to use a wrench to put this on. I don't think we're going to be able to fit the socket in there because I don't think there's going to be room, because look how tall that makes it, right?
Yeah.
That's not going to fit. So we're going to get a wrench to put that on, and that's totally fine. Okay, so one thing we want to do, we need to do 2 preparation steps before we install the filter. The first one is we want to oil the gasket of the filter up so that it's nice and slick, so that it doesn't bind up when we tighten it.
Okay.
So just stick your finger into the filter, make sure it's clean, your finger there. You got a clean glove on, stick it into the filter, pick up a little oil, and just run it around that gasket. Yep, just a little bit, just around the gasket, that's all you got to do. Okay, perfect. All right, the second thing we need to prepare is we need to look at where the oil filter screws into, and we want to make sure that that surface is nice and clean. So again, just like you did with the oil filter, with your clean glove, just run your finger around there just to make sure that we don't have any debris or anything that would interfere with the gasket sealing.
Okay.
Feels clean and smooth?
Yeah.
All right. So right now, what do you think could be the worst possible mistake we could make?
Well, I know what it is.
What would that be?
Not put the oil back.
Not putting the new oil back in. So here's what we're going to do to make absolutely sure we don't forget. Go ahead and grab your bottle of oil. Grab one of the paper towels. Make sure it's nice and clean all the way around.
Okay.
All right, and let's bring it over, and we are going to put it into the passenger compartment here.
Not just set it on the ground?
Just set it right there. That way there is no possibility.
I could see that happening, actually.
Absolutely. So that way there's no possibility we forget to add the oil without kicking that when we go to start the car.
Yeah, okay.
All right, let's go ahead and install the new filter. So the first thing you're going to want to do is, again, place that bucket under because we may have some of the oil spill there. All right. And go ahead and reach up there and thread it in.
Easier said than done because it's sideways.
This is easier said than done, and it is sideways. It is a little bit awkward, but you just got to stick with it. And like anything else, you practice doing this, and you can do an oil change, honestly, in 15 minutes.
Okay, so obviously there's a better way than I'm doing this.
No, not really.
Okay.
You just have to reach in there. You have to feel for it.
I feel it. I see it.
Yep, and just thread it in, and it should thread in really, really easy. If it does not thread in easy, and after like 1 or 2 turns, you feel a lot of resistance, it means you're crossing the threads, and you got to start over immediately. But don't force it. You should be able to spin this thing like 7 or 8 times at least. So guys, if you're doing this yourself for the first time, it's going to not be as easy, and you just got to keep at it and just keep trying. But don't give up, and as you get more practice, you'll be better at it.
Does it look straight?
Yep. Go ahead and spin it.
It feels crooked, but it's straight?
No, it's straight.
What an awkward position.
All right. You got the threads caught?
I think so.
Good. Yep. It's threading. So just keep spinning it, and it should spin super easy until you snug up that gasket to the engine block.
Okay.
If there's any resistance here, you have to stop. You're doing it wrong.
Yeah,
It should be very, very, very easy. Now it's getting snug, so snug it up as tight as you can with your hand.
Okay. Got it.
All right, and now what we want to do is we want to tighten it between 1/4 and 1/2 turn more, so we need our tool to do that. All right, so because this is a different design, we're going to just use regular crescent wrench that we can use on the end of that filter. So see if you can reach up there and tighten the wrench around that filter.
I think I need to open it up a little bit.
Yep, maybe open it up a little bit. And again, we need to be really conscientious of what direction we've got to turn this, so you're going to turn it the same direction that you have been.
Yeah, I do. And I can't really go much.
Can't really go much further now. There it goes a little bit. Yep, it's turning a little bit, but it looks like you're really straining to turn it.
Yeah.
So that's plenty tight. I think you're done. Let me go ahead and check it for you.
Okay.
After we add oil to it, what do we have to do?
Well, I don't know.
That's all right. That's all right. So the first thing, we want to make sure there's no leaks.
Okay.
Right? So we're going to check very thoroughly to make sure there's no leaks. The final thing we have to do is we have to reset the oil change indicator in the car, in the dashboard.
And I need to note it because I have to write it.
And you got to write down what mileage you changed your oil. Exactly. So let's start with the first step, and that is let's add oil to it. So where's our oil?
Well, I know where it is.
Yep. We put it in the car so that there's no chance we can forget this step. There's no way we're going to start that engine without oil.
Forgot it.
A lot of people do, and you would be surprised how many times at a Jiffy Lube or oil change place, I've actually had it happen with my company car where they forgot to add oil to it. I drove away and the oil light came on.
I've heard more people say that.
It happens a lot. So we just want to take no chances. Yep, so go ahead and open your cap up. And again, the owner's manual will tell how much oil. We should be fine with 5 quarts. We're going to check it anyway. But we have 5 quarts of oil, and we're just going to add all 5 because that, I know, is the minimum that we're going to need. Sometimes you need more when you replace the filter also. So I know I've had cars that require even almost 6 quarts.
Is this a slow?
Yeah, just pour it in slowly. So there's another little trick you can do, and sometimes you want to make sure you don't glug, glug, glug the oil and splatter it everywhere. If you actually turn the container to the side, like that, it's actually less likely
Why is that?
to glug on, because you've got this whole surface area here.
Okay.
So it kind of flattens it out more, so that way it doesn't kind of glug all over. Yeah. It'll pour smoother.
Yeah, it seems to be.
While Vicki's doing this, I'm looking under the car. After you pour about 1 quart in, you want to check under the car, make sure that there's nothing leaking. That would indicate that you forgot the bolt or didn't tighten the filter, but nothing's leaking. You're good.
Okay.
I did do that, yep.
Can I empty it?
Yeah, go ahead and pour it all in. All right, so one thing you can do, you can save that container, and if we wanted, we could pour our old oil back into that container to make it easier to bring to the store for recycling, or just pitch the container, but you're good to go. So now, what we're going to do is put your oil cap back on, and grab one of the paper towels.
Okay.
And grab that dipstick and pull it out. Wipe it clean with the paper towel. Put it back in.
Okay.
And immediately draw it right back out again, and let's take a look. All right, that's a clean read right there. We can clearly see we're between the third and fourth dot. We're going to need to add more oil because when we start the engine, remember we're going to run some oil through the filter. The filter has to absorb some oil. So we actually are going to need more than 5 quarts for this application, but you can clearly see that we are just between the third and fourth dot, but I guarantee you that's going to lower. So we may add maybe a half a quart more. We'll see. Right now we just want to go ahead and run the engine. So go ahead and put that back in. Okay, so Vicki, right now just turn the key to on, but don't start it. What we want to do is we find our oil light. We can see it's right there. Okay, go ahead and do that one more time. We want to make absolutely certain that oil light goes out after we start the car. All right, so go ahead and turn it off and start the car. And that light should go off. If that light doesn't go off after about 3 or 4 seconds, there it goes off now. If it doesn't go off after 3 or 4 seconds, we want to turn the car off. We want to check our oil level again, make sure that everything's good. So that light went off. That's a good sign. Some cars will have an oil pressure gauge instead. We're keeping it running right now for a little bit, and we want to look under the car. All clean? Yeah. All right, let's hop out. And as I said before, when we check the oil, we want to make sure that we have the engine off and that it's been sitting for at least 5 minutes so all the oil drains back. Then we can get an accurate estimate of the oil. So to fill in that time for the 5 minutes, we need to check the owner's manual, figure out how we're going to reset the change oil light. So it's usually under oil. So if we look at oil...
Oil pressure light?
Nope, not the pressure light. We need...
oil life system.
Oil life system looks good. 1011. Oh, it says your dealer has trained service people to reset it. Okay, we don't need people to reset it. So there's several ways that we can do it. Obviously, YouTube is one of them, or Googling it.
I have a menu in there that I go in and...
Exactly. The other thing is I have a scan tool that can do it, so we can do it through the scan tool. But on a GM, most of them, this is how you do it. There you are.
Okay. So, my menu, it tells me right there. I believe you just clear it.
Are you sure you want to reset? Yes.
So, there you go.
And there it is, 100%. Awesome. So on other GM cars, there's other ways you can do it. One of them is to turn the key to the on position, not start the car, and you press the gas pedal like 5 times within the first 5 seconds. There's all kinds of ways, but that was interesting. The owner's manual didn't tell us that. All right, we have just one final step left now, and that is we want to make sure that we're at the correct oil level. So it's been about 5 minutes, I would say. So let's get that dipstick out and take a final reading. So again, pull the dipstick, wipe it clean. And let's take a look. All right, well, we can see that it actually ate up quite a bit of oil with the new oil filter. So we can see that we are at the very low level right there. So let's double check that. Let's clean off the dipstick. Clean it one more time. And this is very common when you replace the filter. They can suck up almost a quart of oil. All right, let's take a look. Yep, we've reproduced it exactly. We're right at that first dot. See it?
Yeah.
Right there. All right, so we need to at least add another quart of oil. So let's put that dipstick back in there and add another quart. So we'll have to wait another couple minutes now because, again, we're adding oil at the top of the engine, and when you read from the dipstick is going all the way to the bottom at the oil pan. So we need time for it to settle down through the engine and drain to the bottom, and then we'll read it again. All right, Vicki, let's check the oil now. It's been a couple minutes. Oh, that's way better. Way better. So you see we're right at the third dot. The hashed line is when the engine is hot because things expand when they're hot. So if the engine was hot, we would expect it to read there, but that's perfect reading. I'm happy with that. We're done with our oil change. We just have one last thing left to do, and that is make sure that we have our oil cap back on the engine. And just one last cleanup around the car before we lower it. So if you're on ramps, get all your tools out, get your bucket out, everything from under the car for safety. All right, I think somehow I'm dirtier than you are. You're like totally clean. Yeah, exactly. Good job. All right, so how was it?
It wasn't bad.
Yep, not bad at all. You probably saved a bunch of money too, because usually they also try to upsell you all these things, and all of those things they try to upsell you on, we're going to learn how to do on this channel through this video series, Vicki's Car Clinic. So if you liked what you saw here and you think this might benefit people, give us a thumbs up and let us know. And thanks for watching. Hope you found this helpful.
Thanks.
All right.